Hey y'all, Will here, otherwise Xelray, and today in Once Human we're going to be talking about hard modes and how to become as strong as you can to deal with these in an easier manner, or to be able to deal with them at all if you're having a time just struggling with them, because I know a lot of people have. I myself went through hard modes today understanding what they were and had a blast. I got some new mods, I got a lot of items, and that's great for me, but I want that to be great for you as well. So if you are having trouble with hard modes, this may be able to help you. We're going to start from the bottom up, so the beginning might seem basic, but hopefully after that it'll pick up and maybe you can learn something if you are already very well acquainted with the game. If you're not, this should be a great guide for you. Jumping right into it, we're going to be looking at our gear workbench. Now, most people can understand with the gear workbenches, this is how you craft your weapons and your armor. Yet, a lot of people don't understand that there's a few things with this. And I have seen people in tier 3 and tier 4 gear going into level 50 hard modes. And if they're at tier 3, 252 damage compared to tier 5 being 600 damage just on your basic gun is a huge difference. So before you even attempt to go into hard modes, make sure that all your gear is upgraded to the highest level. That's bare bones basic, I know, but I feel like I have to say that. Secondly, we're going to look at calibrations. I think most of us understand that weapon calibrations increase weapon damage, but they also allow attributes to unlock at level 4, 7, and 10. And if you are familiar with The Last Valor, you can tell that these are not the standard stats that come with it. We can change these. We can replace calibration attributes with whatever we want if we find the proper blueprint for it. When we do that, it costs 500 Starcrum, so you have to make sure, not Starcrum, excuse me, Stardust Source, and you have to make sure that it's a worthwhile purchase. If it isn't, you may want to think about it, or if you have enough of the resource to spare, you can try anything you want to. Yeah, what's important is understanding where these blueprints come from. When we go into the overworld and find chests, weapon chests specifically in this, or we defeat a boss, we have a chance to get weapons that drop from that crate. They might be legendary, purple, blue, green, but they all have a chance to drop these calibration blueprints. And you had to bring them back to your base, go to the disassembly bench, go to your weapons tab and disassemble them there to get that. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, but whatever is on the gun that you find will be the calibration blueprint that you receive from it. It's a huge help very quickly if you get something that fits your build perfectly. So I wanted to mention that. Next, we have armor calibration. I think most of us understand, and it's very easy to see, that when you calibrate your armor, you gain more HP. For most builds that are weapon-based, that's all you care about. I want to be stronger. I don't want to die as quickly. I don't want to go into my down but not out phase. So please, let me have more HP. Yet, for the psi intensity builds out there, be them Frost Vortex, Power Surge, Burn, or Explosive Bomber, this also increases your psi intensity, and your psi intensity is the base of all the damage you do when you're one of those builds. Of course, weapon damage still exists, so you can accentuate with adding more weapon damage, but your psi intensity will be doing the bulk of the work for you. So please, upgrade your armors as much as possible. When you go into hard mode, you want a +10 weapon, and you want all your armor at +6. And that's the bar of entry, in my opinion, just to make sure you have an easier time. Secondly is make sure that you upgrade your ammo. A lot of people don't realize that the basic ammo that you get, the copper ammo, even if it's AP ammo, does not increase your damage very much. This is better than your standard copper ammo. Excuse me for the delay there. Yet, when you go up to tungsten ammo, just standard tungsten ammo, which will be right here, it's 10% compared to the AP copper, which was only 4%. Tungsten is easy to farm. It requires a little bit of acid, but really, this increases your damage so much. And if you have the resources, not only that, but you can go up to tungsten AP ammo. And what a lot of people don't realize here is that you can select what your ammo does. So here you can say, hey, this deals more damage to targets affected by burn or frost vortex, which is okay, I guess. And I get a lot more psi intensity, but I'm a weapon build, so I need to go down to a different thing. And I just want damage per shot, honestly. you can change out the selected type of resource to get different types of effects on your legendary ammo or your standard tungsten AP ammo. So that's a new thing that came in the launch of the game. And the only other thing that you may need to know amongst with your ammo is how to put that on. You go to your weapon, bring that up, you go to your accessories, and you can change your ammo type. And even from here, you can see which ammo is the best for you. I think most people are just going to run tungsten rifle ammo if you're using a rifle. And in rare cases like Leah Labs or maybe Men's Devorin, you might upgrade to legendary ammunition just to be able to get that much more damage out of it. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about gear-wise is understanding your build. And I think all builds start with your weapon, so we're going to start there. I have the Last Valor, and we're just going to read off what this weapon does. Now, there's a typo in here, so what I'm reading is going to be slightly different from what you see. Every 4 hits, you trigger Shrapnel. Crit hits count as 2 hits, so every 2 hits with a critical, you cause Shrapnel to proc, but otherwise it's going to be every 4 hits. Now, when you do crit, you gain a Shrapnel trigger chance +1 for 1 second. So you want to be critting at least every second, but more isn't bad. And also, the critical damage of your Shrapnel is increased as well. So we can just look at this right away and see, I want critical rate and as much as possible. This is what this gun is asking me to do. So I need to follow through. And your key armor here doesn't really matter too much unless it also accentuates what your build wants. But in this case, I'm using Bray, it doesn't. But when you look at Falcon, it increases my critical damage and my critical rate. And my Lone Wolf set also increases my critical rate. So this shows that I'm focusing very heavily on crit rate as much as I can to make this build work as best as possible for me. If you were to look at a different gun, you're doing the same thing. Let's take, for example, let's go over to the Memento. So hits grant a chance at triggering Fast Gunner, so that tells us specifically what type of damage we're going to be working with, which is weapon damage that is accentuated by Fast Gunner. However, every weak spot, this chance doubles, which means it's almost going to be every hit is going to give us a trigger of Fast Gunner. And every time you do trigger Fast Gunner, 1 bullet will be reloaded to your magazine. Each shot has a 40% chance to consume 1 more bullet than standard, and when those extra bullets are consumed, you gain 80% more attack. So we need to be hitting weak spots, and if we don't hit weak spots, we don't really have a chance to be able to have Fast Gunner and also gain as many extra attacks because we're going to feed through our own magazine too quickly. So you can see we need weak spot damage, we need maybe magazine size, maybe attack speed. This is a weapon damage build, so of course that. If we have criticals on top of our weak spot damage, they can do massive damage, but do we have enough space to fit all that in one build? So we have to make decisions. Or simply we have something like, let's go with the Corrosion. This is a power surge build, but your power surges can cause critical hits now, and it has a base chance of 15%. So you can see from here already that we need to focus on psi intensity and critical rate and critical damage to get the most out of this gun. These are simple things to try to understand so that you can look at the armor and see what best works for you. However, if you're still quite confused about this, you can simply go to anything you want to press. Let's go to the Corrosion and press J. This can be on anything in your inventory, anything in your blueprints, but we're going to press J and it's going to bring up a menu, actually a whole website for us to use. And it's going to tell us how to get a mod that we want, gear that we want, and essential tips to how to play with the gun. So if you want to see what armor mod it recommends on your mask, you can hit First Electrocution, which shows you that the power surge causes more damage to enemies not in the shock state. You say, okay, so less shock state, the better. You can take a look at Static Shock and see that it reduces your shock state time. So static shock will pair with first electrocution, and you can see from both of these that the first electrocution will drop from securement silo EX1, potentially from Leah Labs, a few other locations. You can see from static shock, it can drop from Treant in hard or pro mode, weapon crates in the Red Sands or Blackheart region. This gives you a lot of information that allows you to build stronger, quicker, and better, and have guidance. This is an essential part of the game, and I think a lot of people do not see this, and it's just very helpful to know about if you don't already. The last thing with guiding your build is to take a look at mods. I was going through mods today, and this is when this all hit me. I should do a video about this because this is kind of intricate. A standard mod is like static shock here. It says static shock as the weapon mod. That's it. This will have general stats on it. However, you can see that this surge amplifier has violent on it, and violent will always cause your first sub attribute to be critical damage. So that's kind of good to know about, because you're not going to be able to get critical damage on anything else unless it has the violent attribute. If you have the talents attribute, it will always give you elemental damage, and this elemental damage will be higher than any status damage that you could find otherwise, yet you can find elemental and status damage on the same mod, so you can double dip in that stat and make it that much stronger potentially. There is also precision, which is going to probably be under a shrapnel. Here we go. Obliterate has precision. It will always start off with a weak spot damage. So you'll know precision will always give you weak spot damage. That's great. And finally, you're going to have one other specific. I think there might be one or two other specifics I have not found yet, but I do want to mention that you can find a mod. So this will change. If you're a burn build, it will say burn. If you're a fortress warfare build, it will say fortress warfare, just like this final territory does. And it will give you specific things. The top and bottom mod says while in fortress warfare state, you have more damage for your weapon, but also you have a higher chance to trigger fortress warfare on that last stat. And what's strange about this is you can see on this purple mod, you have 4 attribute effects, not 3 like almost any other purple mod will have. So this is going to accentuate your build even further, and these are probably going to be your best in slot. However, they're very hard to get, and it seems they're only currently dropping from Prime Wars. Maybe we'll see more in Pro Mode. I'm not sure. But this can make your build super strong, because without trigger rate or without certain other stats, your builds are going to feel like they're not coming together as well, and I call that a high bar of entry build. So you may want to find, if you're still having too much trouble with something like the Boom Boom per se, which is a very high bar of entry build, you might want to bring it down to something like the Outsider or the Icy Rain if you want to have an easier time getting into hard modes as well, while keeping this build in the back pocket for when you do get the proper stats. That was a lot to get started with before we even start talking about hard modes, but those are all things that help you out for your build. The final thing I want to state is about your own longevity in battle, and for that we're going to go to the supply bench. And really what I want to mention is this medic specialization that allows your HP recovery to be 10% higher on your actual activator, your healing item, and when you craft activators, you gain double the activators. What's really crazy about this is simply when you do make an activator, you can already tell if I craft one, it's going to give me 2. That makes sense to almost anyone. However, those 2 activators I just crafted, I can upgrade again into quick activators or something else. Let's just take a quick activator. We're going to take those 2, and what do you know? We're going to make now 4 quick activators off the 1 activator that we actually built. So this can get you a huge amount of activators very quickly, so that you won't have to be worrying about running out of them when you need all that health to be healed, especially like Arachsiam hard mode, because you're going to have a poison mechanic that slaps people around pretty quick. And you can see I have hundreds of these things. I have 60 on my bar. I also believe that the quick, long-lasting activator is always the best activator you can use. Not only does it give you a straight-up heal, it will allow you to recover HP over time as well. Not to mention that quick activators have a very short cooldown time, so that's to be known as well. The last thing for your own longevity is we're going to go over into the deviation field guide here. And if you're still having trouble surviving, you may want to think about bringing out the festering gel, which not only heals you over time, it reduces your sanity buildup over time. It will also block bullets for you if it's between you and the enemy, and this can happen for your entire party who's around the festering gel. This is a super strong deviant. It's probably one of the best ones in the game, and it is not to be squandered for weapon damage if you can't survive well enough to even put that damage on the table. The next mention is Dr. Teddy. It's very similar to the festering gel, however, he just stabs you in the thigh with needles and heals you. If someone does go into the down but not out mode, he can bring them back up instantly instead of you having to run over and potentially putting yourself in harm. So Dr. Teddy might be more of a team player in certain situations. You also have honorable mentions like the Grumpy Bulb, which is a taunting and disruption type deviant. You have the Voodoo Doll, which is a damage reflection deviant, and probably the best out of the three of the secondary mentions is the Mini Wonder, which absorbs all bullets coming at you and refills your own magazine from the inventory without you having to reload. These are all defensive deviants, and they may be very helpful for you. I also could mention that deviants like the Harvest Seed will give you every 10 minutes a chance to heal yourself up to full health. It might be helpful in a pinch, but it's not very secure. You can't rely on it. But when it does happen, it's a nice thing to see. And I think with all that said and done, we can actually start talking about where to get items in hard mode and what they're good for. So thank you for holding along with all this, and on to the next stage of this video. And starting off with the silos, we're going to be looking at Silo Sigma, which is the very first one you do in the game. And with this silo, it's one of the longest ones you can do. It has 2 bosses, which means 2 loot pools. And the final boss, Dave, has a special mechanic where you have to attack him with his own Gatling gun to drop an immunity shield to be able to finish the fight. Outside of that, everything is a cakewalk. Sometimes you get overwhelmed by the timed event in the seepage zone by the gotcha machine playing the song, but other than that, you're going to be fine. Oh, note, to be able to get into the seepage zone after the very first area as you enter Silo Sigma, you get into a room that's locked beyond if you don't kill the big burly dude with the shield. So when you do take him down, you're going to need to pull the access card from him to get into this silo seepage zone in the first place. So that's all to do with Silo Sigma. On to the next. Next in line is Silo Phi. And Silo Phi is pretty simple. You can rush this pretty well. You just shoot straight to the entry of the big room where it's going to be locked. You just turn around, take out the spawner that's there. It will open the door, then you can split off, do the hospital seepage zone, and get that loot table, then run to the boss and get that loot table. Now this boss also has a second phase, you could call it, where once you deal enough damage, you have to then stop dealing damage because it hits an immunity phase, and then you had to defeat all the spawners around it. Those purple things that spit out the deviants every so often. Once you do that, you can attack the boss again. Easy peasy. Next, I usually find is Silo Psi. This is the silo where you fight the fridge. Everything is pretty easy in this silo outside of the fridge being a complete meat shield and that whole fight being a little bit wonky. You have to pause, break down the shields, take down the generators, take down the enemies that spawned or defrosted, you could say. Then you go after the fridge again, rinse and repeat a couple times, you get the boss down. It used to be a lot harder. They did tone it down a little bit so it's not as annoying, but it's still pretty annoying. Then we are on to Silo EX1. This silo is where you have to fight the giant antenna tower. And the antenna tower does not take any elemental damage, unfortunately. So if you are an elemental build, you're going to be chipping away at this. So you might want to bring a friend who is a more weapon damage build to be able to actually do this fight easily without much worry, or just have a secondary pioneer build or something like that just to get weapon damage out. Also, on the last fight, you can get frozen, and it's very useful to have a chloro armor whim on you, so if you do dip your health too low when you are frozen in place, it will heal you back up to full. Next in line is Silo Alpha, and Silo Alpha is a 2-boss stage. You need, and you absolutely need, a baton to do the seepage zone. That's the melee weapon that does electrical damage, because in that seepage zone, when you open it up, you do need to hit every single switch with the baton to be able to release the boss there. The main boss is not that hard. You run up, kind of tanky. Make sure for any shield enemy, if you don't know, shoot the feet for the weak spot. If you don't need to worry about weak spots, then just beat them up. However, the shield will block most damage if you don't aim there anyways. So just remember, for the final boss, shoot the feet. He'll go down quick. Finally, we have Silo Theta. This is all the way at the top of the map. It has the chance to drop the Enchanting Void and also Dr. Teddy on either the PvE or PvP servers, since I still get questions about that. The seepage zone is pretty simple, and actually this whole run is pretty simple. You can almost run through the whole thing. Right before you get into the seepage zone, all you really need to do is take down the 3 spawners in the murky water that's right in front of it. Then you go in, twist the statues, defeat that boss, run to the main boss. Now the main boss can overwhelm a lot of people if they don't have high DPS, so if you don't have the highest DPS, you should try to take down the enemies in the area, and I would highly recommend the Festering Gel as well here, because solo this can get really tricky, and in a group it can still get tricky, but at least you have friends to help you out. Then to go on to the bosses, let's just go in a row and start with Ravenous Hunter. For a weak spot build, Ravenous Hunter is the hardest hard mode boss. You can try to deny that, yet I am a weak spot build and it takes me the longest to take him out. There are more phases to all the hard mode bosses, and for Ravenous Hunter you have to focus on clones when he comes back into the field from being in his shooting range, and also when he's in his shooting range style mode, you have to hide behind pillars, which will avoid you from getting knocked down. You need to take down the big enemies first and then the smaller spawners second, and that will also avoid you being knocked down. And then finally, to even do damage to him, you have to attack his weapon, knock that off, and then you can attack the main boss. The main boss's health bar is actually super easy to get down. It's just all these other mechanics that really don't help if you have weak spot builds. If you don't have a weak spot build, this boss is going to be a lot easier, and most likely the third boss, Arachsiam, is going to be the hardest. Ravenous Hydra does drop both Burn and Frost Vortex mods, so if you are doing a build with those two things, you're going to be on Ravenous Hydra for a while. He also has a chance to drop higher level Festering Gels, which is pretty helpful across the board. Next in line on the bosses is Treant, and I believe Treant is probably the easiest boss, hands down. All you have to do is stay on your very start spot right after the cutscene and take down the first enemy in front of you on the ground, but stay up on that area, that raised cliff. Then you look to your left, you attack that tentacle. That tentacle spawns a big jellyfish looking thing. You take that down, then you take the tentacle down. Then you jump to the rightmost tentacle, which is closest to you, behind the bus, and that's where you pretty much live for the rest of the fight. You take down that tentacle, take down the small ads, you fire at the final tentacle, it will spawn this servitor looking thing. It's a big kind of demon devil looking flying enemy. It will fly towards you, take that down, take that tentacle down, and then you're perfectly set up on that raised highway platform that's broken down on one side to just rail into the boss's weak point, and it also blocks so much of the damage that comes at you. You do not have to worry about jumping over the explosive thumps that it does or most of the other damage. However, you do have to worry about lightning bolts, and most people don't even know there's lightning bolts, but as soon as they hit, if you're not ready, people are going to be hitting the ground. So it's very, very important to understand how to dodge them, or just have friends to revive you afterwards. For Treant, you're going to get Power Surge and Explosive Bomber mods. Mind you, all these mods are specifically for your weapon. Bosses drop weapon mods only. And now we're on to Arachsiam, what a lot of people think is the hardest boss in hard mode because of the poison clouds. And in my mind, that's not the case. As long as you have long-lasting, quick activators, you can use those so quickly and they heal through the poison, and it's pretty much a cakewalk. The boss itself has tons of weak points. You just need to burn it down to 33% of its health. It runs up on a pillar, sometimes does an attack or two while it's immune, which is kind of annoying. Yet, once it's up on the pillar, you take down all the eggs. I think there's 7 or 8 of them. You drop the boss to the ground, it wriggles on its back, rinse and repeat. It will never really attack you again. If you have enough damage, you won't even have to worry about the ghouls, the dog-looking things with the cloth. Those spawn 3 at a time. You don't really need to worry about those after the first time you do it. Just remember, quick, long-lasting activators are your best friend. If you have those, you probably won't even need the festering gel. Remember, they will put spider webs on the ground that you'll need to dodge, and they're very hard to see. That's probably going to be the most annoying part of this fight. And also, Arachsiam drops Fast Gunner, Bullseye, and Fortress Warfare mods, which are probably going to be the least used mods outside of Fast Gunner, potentially. There is a season goal to solo Arachsiam in hard mode, as well as the Ravenous Hunter. Both of those can be done, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And finally, we're on to the Shadow Hound, which is the second easiest boss. Really, the Shadow Hound is simple. You shoot it. The hardest part is getting to its shoulders to hit the weak points so that you can actually deal damage to it again. Most everyone knows to look up and destroy the ball in the air, which is very simple to take down. And beyond that, the worst attack that the Shadow Hound has is the shovel mouth attack, where he digs his mouth into the ground and just charges at you. If you actually fight near a doorway, you can go through that doorway and avoid that attack entirely, and the entire fight becomes easy. Just make sure to take down ads. You need to take down the first 2 dogs. You need to take down the 4 orbs as they spawn so that you don't get attacked with all this extra minimal chip damage, but it can add up very, very quickly. Shadowhound will be dropping your bounce and shrapnel mods, and that will cover all the weapon mods that you can get. And then most likely after you get your weapon mod, if that's the first thing you do, your mask mod is going to be the next thing from Silo EX1. Most people won't be doing the Theta silo until way later because top mods are not that important as for actually what they give you. Yet, you're going to be bouncing between the other ones as you see fit. Have fun, mix it up, don't do the same thing over and over again, and find some friends if you can find them if you're having trouble. With that, that's pretty much all the hints I have for each silo and boss. Hopefully this video helped you, and if you need any more help, leave a comment down below. I'll try to get to you as quickly as I can, and thank you for watching. Later.